This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg, here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Eben Janson. I'm with Katrien Malan. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube with our whole show available on our YouTube channel. Today, the fuel price comes down in South Africa by 67 cents per litre. But why does the cost of living then not come down? Also, Africa finds itself on the brink of a massive economic breakthrough, they say. But are we prepared for this is the question we'll put to a panel of experts a little bit later. Then we'll look at Heart Month and a brand new cricket tournament that's launching right here in South Africa. Let's go to Katrien first, though, for a news update.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrien Malan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. Opposition parties have welcomed the resignation of IEC chairperson Pansy Tlakula following the IEC headquarters leasing scandal. She lost her constitutional bid to appeal the electoral court decision against her last month. Tlakula had been fighting for her job for months since 5 opposition parties led by the UDM approached the electoral court over the leasing of IEC headquarters in Centurion in 2009. Motorists are expected to flock to petrol stations today after the petrol price decreased by 67 cents per litre at midnight. A litre of petrol in Gauteng now costs R13.66, down from R14.33. The price of diesel dropped by 25 cents a litre. The Hawks have busted a gang of robbers who posed as policemen. The 5 suspects were travelling in a bogus police car in Midrand when the Hawks moved in last night. 2 suspects were killed in the confrontation and the other 3 were arrested. Moving to Africa, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization has warned that the world's worst Ebola epidemic has put harvest at risk and sent food prices soaring in West Africa, and that the problem will intensify in coming months. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says the magnitude and the complexity of the Ebola outbreak has been underestimated. It's now infected over 3,000 people, killing over 1,500 of them.
We are not going to let go and say that we are going to let the outbreak have the upper hand. We cannot allow that to happen.
Now, moving to international news, and a week before the 13th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in the U.S., and with heightened tensions to terrorist threats against Americans, U.S. President Barack Obama has ordered the deployment of more troops to Iraq to protect the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Obama's announcement came on the same day that Islamic State militants released a video purporting to show the beheading of a second American hostage, journalist Steven Sotloff.
If the video is genuine, we are sickened by this brutal act taking the life of another innocent American citizen. Our hearts go out to the Sotloff family, and we will provide more information as it becomes available.
Now remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Katrien. Now, motorists across the country are breathing a sigh of relief this morning after the petrol price came down by 67 cents per litre last night. Even though this means looser belts for some, economists have warned that this won't necessarily have a positive effect on other consumer prices. Negative pressures like e-toll fees in Gauteng, higher energy and fuel costs and wage demands will all, according to these experts, add to the rising costs of living and doing business. Well, today we are joined by the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry spokesperson, Pittman Roos. Good morning, Pittman.
Hi, Eben.
Thanks for being with us again. Pittman, this doesn't quite add up, the whole thing, When the petrol price goes up, everyone screams, oh, taxi fares must go up, these prices must go up, bread must go up, milk must go up, everything goes up when the petrol price goes up. But when the petrol price comes down significantly like this, almost a rand or 2/3 of a rand, the cost of living stays the same. That amounts to robbery, doesn't it?
Well, let me ask you this. When the price of petrol goes down, does your salary decrease?
Nobody doesn't increase when the petrol price increases.
But that's the point. The point is that South Africa or across the world, we've got an economic concept called sticky prices, and which is particularly acute in South Africa. The research has shown this. So fundamentally what it says is when you have a downward pressure in prices with the fuel, seldom does that translate into a direct decrease in general consumer prices across the board.
That's the bad news, Pittman. So does this? It feels like extra tax every time the petrol price goes up a little bit. The bad news is, as you've said, this is just the way it is. But let's move on to the reality. Just explain to us why the price at the pump now is down a little bit and what it will mean in the end to the consumer.
Sure. The petrol price that we pay is a composite of two different variables. First of all, it's fuel, the international oil price, Brent crude. And secondly, it's the South African exchange rate against most quoted the dollar. Right?
Yeah.
So there we have the oil price in the grey bars. And you can see that it's been steadily increasing. This is from, I think, 2010.
Yeah.
And then the red line is your annual growth figure. And compare that to the right-hand scale.
Is this South African growth?
That's correct. That's correct. So that's the rand price of fuel that you're paying. Okay. Now, the important thing is to look at what this red line is doing, because that is what's going into inflation.
Yeah.
You know, the nominal figure of oil price is important, but it's the growth.
Yeah, it's a guide in the end, isn't it?
Exactly. So you can see it's been pretty high. It's been 20%, 30%.
Yeah.
In the 2012, it was near 50%. But if the oil price does not change, and that's the green bar, we will see a decrease and actually a contraction in the price of petrol. But that also assumes that the exchange rate does not change.
And what's the outlook? What's the outlook, let's call it short and medium term, for the oil price, for that matter?
Well, you know, global economic issues then come at play. Okay, so you have Russia with tensions in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Russia is a major energy exporter. You have always problems in the Middle East, but how acute are they, and how does it affect the oil supply? And
also the Middle Eastern oil fields are starting to run a little bit dry, isn't it?
I'm not quite sure about that. And I mean, we do have other oil fields in Africa and the West Coast and North Sea. So, but it all affects each other. I mean, if you can make more money as a Canadian exporter, why not?
So the bad news for the consumer today is that the only relief they'll really feel is at the pump.
Yeah, but I mean, that gives you a bit of a leeway. In the past, if you paid, for example, 2,000 Rand a month on fuel, now you'll possibly pay, let's say, 200 Rand less. So I don't think anybody wants to pay more.
Nobody's complaining. Well, what about things that affect us directly, like consumer prices? We spoke about these. Sure. They don't come down. What's the outlook? Economists say it's not going to affect consumer prices at all. Do you share that view?
Patience. It's about steadily working its way through the economy. You know, the big thing is the competitiveness of the South African economy. If we were more competitive, outside pressures of price would influence consumer prices more directly. But it doesn't, because we have a more concentrated economy. That's just the way the South African economy has developed over the years. But it is good news because it is a deflationary pressure. So you add everything together and it, you know, hopefully steers.
So we won't get an interest rate hike then if we get another petrol price drop. Maybe
I'm not going to put my head at block on that one. But I mean, if you think about it, the last interest rate hike was 25 basis points.
25 points, yeah.
It could have been 50, it could have been 75, it could have been 100. So obviously the Reserve Bank is looking forward and seeing these pressures as well.
Quickly, in conclusion, just wrap for us. What are the negative pressures that are impacting on our economy at the moment, and how does that affect our outlook, and what needs to change in order for our outlook to improve a little bit?
Sure. Cyclical and structural factors. Cyclical is global demand, and global demand is growing. South Africa needs to tap into that. Why are we not tapping into that? Structural domestic factors. Strikes in the mines, strikes in the metal sector, that's hurt our economy very badly. And also weak business confidence. And the improvement in business confidence will make businesses more readily spend and employ more people. That will grow the economy.
The thing that's worrying is the rising cost of business, and we do have a monopoly factor in South Africa that, in a way, drives the price of business, doing business, up. Is that right?
Your assessment is correct to a degree, because I think the cost of business is really the main culprit is government. We understand that there's a lot of reasons why we need to have different regulations, but it's about smart regulation and making sure the regulations are as easy to follow and as cost-effective as possible. But we're not really seeing that trend. We're seeing more and more cost added to companies, and especially the small guys. Small businesses have to spend a greater proportion of their time and resources to meet all these requirements. And small businesses are the places where you create jobs, we transfer skills, and you get guys who's not really, doesn't have a tertiary education, and you train them in the business world.
Well, that's why we've got a new Ministry of Small Business here in South Africa. Hopefully that will have a look at the monopoly factor and others in South Africa to make business or doing business a little bit easier. Pittman, thank you for joining us and bringing us, if not the good news, just the economic news today. Pittman Rus is the spokesperson for the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He always joins us whenever there's good news in the offing. We thought it was good news. Pittman says it's not. Thank you very much for joining us, Pittman. Fantastic. Let's take a quick look at what you're talking about on social media. I'm sure it's the petrol price. Yes. Toomey says it's a bumper-to-bumper at various filling stations across the country this morning due to the slashing of the fuel price. Mrs. O says petrol decreases by 67 cents on Wednesday. What a relief that something is cheaper for a change. Hashtag the petrol price. There you have a lovely picture of how people are queuing this morning. I'm sure it's happening all around the country. That from Darius, he says, all around the country. There we have a little bit of humor, of course. Celebrating a fuel price reduction is like being happy that someone temporarily stopped punching you in the face. Well, Liability Guy says that. Simon Coleman, that was Simon Coleman who sort of re-sent that. The good news is we're paying 67 cents less per litre here on the Highveld for fuel. And, if that downward trend continues, Pittman says there might be some good news further down the line for us. But today we pay tribute to South African cricketer Norman Gordon, who passed away yesterday at the age of 103 years old. Gordon was the only Test cricketer to live beyond 100 years. He made his Test debut against England in December 1938, playing every Test of that 5-match series. In his later life, Gordon ran a sports shop in central Johannesburg. He was the last living person to have played Test cricket before World War II.
Go on. Go explore. Go with the waves. Lead the brave. Go bold. Go strong. Try. Dare. Go everywhere. To oceans where no one's gone.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, Africa is on the brink of an economic breakthrough, much like China was 20 years ago and India 30 years ago. That's according to the World Bank, I tell you. This year saw the introduction of a small and medium enterprises ministry, with the most important goal in mind being the development and growth of small businesses. And the future, they say, looks promising. However, one must then ask, how much experience do small business owners really have when it comes to exporting goods and establishing themselves in the seemingly promising future. Now, to further this discussion, we are joined by the men behind the Centre of Export Development, Mr. Chris Edie and Mr. Oli Malabane, who is with us here. Oli is also the portfolio manager of the first South African Green Fair and Expo. Then we are also joined by Mr. Alvain Smith, chairman of the Alternative Energy Association. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsroom this morning.
Thank you.
Morning.
Africa is on the brink of an economic breakthrough. We've been saying that for the last 6 months. If I can start in the far corner there, sir, just give us your views on this and what do you see? Do you think we are ready for this breakthrough? We are prepared?
I think Africa is prepared. We're seeing more democracy in Africa. We're seeing more diplomacy in Africa. I think we are prepared. We just need to put our policies and processes in place.
Tell us a little bit more about the Centre for Export Development and how this will tie in to the kind of future we see in the next 10 years, for that matter.
The Centre for Export Development is a Section 21 organization which was established in 2008 by Mr. Chris Edie. What we do is we partner with SMMEs, assist them in terms of coaching and mentoring, as well as skills development programs. My role is actually distribution of proposals to various business chambers, assist them in terms of meeting them halfway in terms of service delivery as well.
Now, you're also if I've got it right, you're also the portfolio manager of the first South African Green Fair and Expo.
Yes, that's correct.
Just give us a little bit of detail about that and how this you see to developing.
Well, this is the first South African Green Fair Expo taking place at Hartfeld Arena in 2015 in March. We have partnered with ISO as part of our sponsors, and we intend to engage more stakeholders. Our target market is actually people who are interested in saving energy, energy saving costs, consumer goods, import and export, as well as energy and efficiency.
Now, Alvain, you are the chairperson of the Alternative Energy Association. Tell us, how do you see Africa tapping into alternative energy to supercharge this economic breakthrough that we're talking about in the medium term, for that matter?
Even as you know, renewable energy technologies is now a reality in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's no more pie in the sky. And therefore, South Africa have become acknowledged as being the gateway to the rest of the continent when it comes to renewable energy technologies and expanding it right up into the continent. And this will form a basis of this whole new development we're talking about.
Now, you're also endorsing the Green Fair as well and the Nigeria Alternative Energy Association. Just tell us a bit more about the work that you guys are going to be doing in Nigeria and what you'll be focusing on.
We, with the help and assistance from the Department of Trade and Industry, we go to countries like Nigeria on the continent to go and promote local industry to get export orders and to generally expand on renewable energy industry. The fair that's being organized, again, is to promote on behalf of our members the green economy, the green energy industry.
That sector, that's set for a big boost. Mr. Edie, if I can come to you now, I want to talk about export in general, but I want to widen it and talk about internal export within Africa, within the business sectors in Africa. How are we going to connect the different business sectors within Africa, within the export scenario that you focus on?
One of the experience we've had doing our research is that some of the products, for instance, the renewable energy, when we were doing the studies for the Green Economy Export Development Program,
we found out that for an entrepreneur in South Africa, for him to break through in the renewable energy industry is very difficult. You have to go through IPP, you have to go through a lot of tenders. But if you go to other markets in Africa, like your DRC, there is actually energy poverty in those areas. These products are, once you are able to develop a product that will work, you will find buyers. But in South Africa, we complain every day about the energy prices, but South Africa does not actually have energy poverty. South Africa is far better than most of the countries in Africa. And if you take most of the products that are not selling here to other African markets, like the West Africa, your Central Africa, they sell very fast. In 2012 and 2013, we've had a lot of success. Mm-hmm. We have one of the entrepreneurs that developed a solar charging device that he has been having in South Africa for about 4 years now. He is not breaking through into the market. He managed to get a big order last year. And a state government in Nigeria has signed an MOU with one of the delegates for a 100-megawatt solar plant. So I think in Africa, there's enough market. The population of Africa is quite big.
Ollie, you hear the market is there. What about infrastructure? What about roads? What about shipping? What about the things that supercharge economies? Are we focusing enough there?
We are getting there. What our main objective towards 2015 is that we want to reach a level of competence like where no one existed previously. That's why we want to partner with small companies and introduce them to give them access to industries like Nigeria and other developed countries.
Eben, alternative energy. Are we starting to export enough of the technology? Are we sharing enough of the mind share, for lack of a better word, with our neighbours and then further out throughout the continent? And is it happening at the right pace?
In South Africa, we've been very fortunate in that we didn't have to do the groundwork like Europe and America and these countries had to do. So we were fortunate in inheriting some of that technology and some of that know-how from them. And this is what we're doing now. We are exporting what we know and what we've learned and what we've experienced. We are now exporting to Africa.
Mr. Eben, we've got a Ministry of Small Business that we've just launched here in South Africa. The outlook is to help develop that sector as we see it as a great employer in the future of this country. Develop competitiveness among small business owners in South Africa. Where are we?
I think the labor cost in South Africa is still a bit high, but the infrastructure is there. And what we found out is people want, when they buy a product, they are able to get aftercare, after-sales support. And importing from Asia is not actually working in other parts of Africa. People have a bit of confidence in buying from South Africa because they get the aftercare support they deserve for the product. And they can always, the communication between South Africa and other markets are easier than communicating with Asia, where you have different time zones and things like that, and language and cultural barriers. I think South Africa is quite competitive in the African market.
And what are the challenges in renewable energy, alternative energy, and so forth, and then linking that with small business?
South Africa, like in the rest of Africa, and in fact in the rest of the world, policy has always been a problem. Energy and the sun and the wind belongs to our government, and they're the ones who make the rules. So once we get over those rules and once we get government and the authorities to work with us to get these technologies economically viable, that's when things happen. And this, again, is where we can advise the rest of Africa's governments as to which is the best route to take.
Which is the best way. Now, with all of that said, Ollie, final words belong to you. How do you then, or what would you tell young small business owners and young entrepreneurs? How do they get involved and how do you encourage them?
I think young people are a bridge between the old and the new millenniums. They should not lose sight of the lessons that they've learned from the past, but they must always be prepared to adapt to what is good in the future. Also, they should share experiences with everyone, not be selfish, and always willing to lend a hand.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, gentlemen. That is, from the Centre of Export Development, Mr. Chris Ede, who is on the far corner, and he's joined by Mr. Ollie Malabani, and then the chairperson of the Alternative Energy Association South Africa, Mr. Eben Smith, joining us this morning. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And giving us a little insight into where we are on the continent, small business and alternative energy, and how we make that connection. Thank you once again for joining us today. As always, we have to move on. September is Heart Awareness Month, an entire month dedicated to raising awareness about cardiovascular disease in South Africa, culminating with World Heart Day on the 29th of September. Now, together with the World Heart Federation at the Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa, they aim to spread the word that at least 80% of these premature deaths, that's deaths before the age of 60, can be prevented with a healthy, balanced diet, being physically active regularly, and avoiding smoking. Now, Jessica Bacon is a registered dietitian at the Stroke and Heart Foundation, and she joins us from Cape Town this morning. Good morning, Jessica. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Thank you for having me on the show.
And what's the message? Are you encouraging people to check on their blood pressure and go for their annual checkups this month? What's happening?
Definitely. Our theme for September is beat the pressure and get tested. And we're encouraging South Africans to go out and have free blood pressure tests so that they can find out what their blood pressure is. And along with this, to actually reduce their salt intake.
Why South Africa then? Why does South Africa have one of the highest rates of high blood pressure? Are we more stressed than other people in the world? Well, I'd say 1 in 3 people are living with high blood pressure in South Africa. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is what the latest research is showing. And what is quite alarming is that almost half of those people actually aren't aware that they're living with high blood pressure. And this is really putting a huge portion of the population at risk for heart disease and strokes. And, high blood pressure is caused by a number of factors, but one of the key drivers is actually a high salt diet. And in South Africa, we know from various studies that the sort of average salt intake is between 6 and 11 grams a day, which is actually more than double the recommended amount. So, generally we are eating quite a high salt diet, and that is putting a lot of the population at risk for high blood pressure.
Now, salt is the one enemy. We've been brought up, Jessica, to believe that fat is the other enemy. But Tim Noakes is now telling the world, starting here in South Africa, that fat is good as long as you don't eat any carbohydrates with the fat. What are your views at the Heart and Stroke Foundation? Firstly about Tim Noakes, and then about the diet, the meal revolution, I think it's called, that he's donning around the country at the moment.
Well, I think, as you mentioned, fat previously was viewed as the enemy, but over a number of years, these views have started to change. And, at the Heart and Stroke Foundation, we do encourage fats in the diet, but for it to be the healthy type of fat, so looking at the quality of fat. And that is particularly the unsaturated fats, so your vegetable oils, fats found in fatty fish, nuts and seeds, avos, and those actually have been shown to, that type of fat has been shown to actually help to reduce the risk of heart disease and stroke, along with a healthy, balanced diet.
And what are the other things then that you are going to encourage South Africans to do, not just this month, but for the rest of their lives?
Well, definitely, as I mentioned, salt is quite a big focus, particularly this month. And with that, I think one of the sort of key ways that people can actually reduce their salt intake is firstly by looking at the salt that you add at the table. And I think a lot of us are quite guilty of adding salt even before we've tasted our food a lot of the time. So a good place to start is to actually remove that salt shaker from the table, and then you hopefully will be less tempted to add salt to your meals. And then just generally, encouraging a healthy, balanced diet, looking at the portions of food you eat to help maintain a healthy weight, because that is also very important for controlling your blood pressure. And then, as you mentioned before, exercise and just being active regularly is also a really, really important part of a healthy lifestyle.
Jessica, I want to go back quickly to what we spoke about right at the beginning. How do we compare with the rest of the world in relation to heart problems and strokes and so forth?
Well, globally, heart disease and strokes is actually the #1 killer. And in South Africa, the condition HIV and AIDS, unfortunately, is still our biggest killer. But we're seeing that heart disease and strokes have actually moved up, and these are now the second biggest killer in our country. And actually, this problem is growing, and more people are being affected, particularly even younger people, so people of working age, where before that wasn't always necessarily the case. And that's also one of our sort of key messages that we're wanting to get across this Heart Awareness Month, is that actually from about 20 years onwards, start having your blood pressure checked so that you know if you are at risk and if you need to make any changes to your lifestyle.
Well, Jessica, thank you for joining us today. Jessica Bacon is a registered dietitian at the Heart and Stroke Foundation here in South Africa. It's Heart Awareness Month. Be aware of your heart. Have a heart. Let's take a look at what's happening on our social media pages right now. What are we talking about? After wasting anyone else's time, she finally quits. Oh, we're talking about Pansy Tlakula. Better late than never, says Liago. Marco Mwamba says, Advocate Tlakula need a platinum handshake. She had served SA well for so many years. That is the alternative view. What are your views on this? Hallelujah says, I wonder what the UDM is hoping to achieve with Tlakula's resignation. A question that's asked by Hallelujah. Refilwe Matlala says, she finally did the honourable thing and resigned. Of course, talking about the IEC's head, Pansy Tlakula, who handed in her resignation. Like yesterday it was. Well, let's take a look at our Facebook page. What's happening on our Facebook page? That's Newsroom Facebook page. Well, today you will see there that Civil Body OUTA wants an increase of 9 cents in the fuel levy, considered as an alternative to e-tolling. Then an announcement is expected today on whether the EFF leader Julius Malema will be allowed to enter Botswana or not. This after the Botswana government imposed visa restrictions on Malema for what is believed to be his repeated calls for regime change in that country. And the good news is that hard-pressed consumers will benefit from a drop of 67 cents per litre in the price of petrol, which came into effect late last night. Now you can find all of those stories and more on our Newsroom Facebook page. There's no such thing as Newsbook, by the way. It's not something that I'm developing. Time for us to take a short commercial break. Newsroom will be back shortly.
Go on. Go explore. Go with the waves. Lead the brave. Go bold. Go strong. Drive. Dare. Go everywhere, to oceans where no one's gone.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Let's go to Katrine for a quick update of the news headlines.
Opposition parties have welcomed the resignation of IEC chairperson Pansy Tlakula following the IEC headquarters leasing scandal. She lost her constitutional bid to appeal the electoral court decision against her last month. Tlakula had been fighting for her job for months since 5 opposition parties led by the UDM approached the electoral court over the leasing of IEC headquarters in Centurion in 2009. Motorists are expected to flock to petrol stations today after the petrol price decreased by 67 cents per litre at midnight. A litre of petrol in Gauteng now costs R13.66, down from R14.33. The price of diesel dropped by 25 cents a litre. The news in Africa, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization has warned that the world's worst Ebola epidemic has put harvests at risk and sent food prices soaring in West Africa, and that the problem will intensify in coming months. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says the magnitude and complexity of the Ebola outbreak has been underestimated. It's now infected over 3,000 people, killing over 1,500 of them. Now remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you once again, Katrine. Now, the City of Cape Town taxi associations and the Golden Arrow bus service have agreed to work together to prevent further disruptions to the public transport network there. Golden Arrow's bus service has resumed its services to Nyanga, Delft and Mfuleni in Cape Town. The City of Cape Town established a forum through which taxi associations could air their grievances. This followed extensive violence due to a taxi driver strike earlier this week, in which at least 8 Golden Arrow buses were set alight in Nyanga. Taxi groups are unhappy about an increase in traffic fines, they say. Mayor Patricia de Lille met with taxi leaders and Golden Arrow management. Now, in Cape Town, we are joined by the member of the Mail Committee on Safety and Security in the city, Jean-Pierre Smith. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Eben. I hardly ever hear that name. It's just JP.
Okay, JP, thank you for joining us. And just give us the latest on what's happening with taxi drivers and the public transport in general then there.
All right, mercifully, it's back to normal. We haven't had any incidents since yesterday morning, 3 a.m., so things are quiet. We've got a lot of additional police on the ground, SAPS, Metro Police Traffic and Law Enforcement. We also have been doing some escorts for some of the buses. I know that the story surfaced about armed guards. That wasn't the case. It was just police escorts for the buses into the affected areas. Fortunately, they weren't necessary. And at this stage, the situation seems to have been resolved. Effectively, drivers within one of the associations took the law into their own hands and even circumvented the taxi associations. So it is largely an internal matter between taxi owner and taxi driver. And they chose not to work through the normal channels. The city has, dispute resolution channels with the taxi associations, which unfortunately in this case were not used.
Now, you met with taxi drivers. What are their real concerns, and are you going to address these grievances, and are these legitimate grievances for that matter?
I wasn't part of that engagement, but certainly the grievances, I think, from what was reported to me, were very similar to that of most employees. They want stable working environment, and I think at the heart of the whole problem lies the remuneration model for taxi drivers, the commission-based remuneration model, that both drives the reckless and negligent driving, but also means instability for them. And I must confess that I personally don't understand how national government has not over the years extended the basic conditions of employment that protects workers everywhere else to taxi drivers as employees of the taxi owners. But that's an entirely different labour dispute.
The big complaint by taxi drivers there is that there's a sudden increase in traffic fines. Is that the case? And what are your views on that?
It's twofold. The provincial government, not the city, increased the traffic fines, saying that it's been a very long time since it's done, and quite frankly, the fines no longer reflect a meaningful disincentive. They needed to be increased. So that was provincial government's handiwork. On the city side, we have been just making sure that our enforcement is more effective. So again, whereas taxi drivers were able in the past to pretty much avoid the consequences, that the fines were of limited significance, they now are unable to do so. Between the admin mark and our increased Operation Reclaim and our aggressive focus on impounding, I think we are starting to make them feel the pain of the road traffic transgressions they commit, and are slowly but surely compelling compliance. And I think that has had a fallout as well. Our vehicle pound is brimming to capacity. And certainly the admin mark means that sooner or later they have to face the music around the unpaid traffic fines. And I think this is causing some irritation, but quite frankly, if people obeyed the road traffic regulations, which they're required to do both in national law and our own city bylaws, I would not have an interest in them.
What is the cities of Cape Town's position? Do you favour buses over taxis in the city or vice versa?
I think that if you listen to our MACO member for transport for Cape Town, Councillor Brett Heron, and what his department is proposing, there is a mixed model which provides space for both taxis to operate as part of the old transport solution as well as the buses. Obviously, the city is going to continue extending the MyCity bus network because it's essential that we can give commuters a high-quality, reliable, safe and dignified commuter experience. It's part of increasing mobility, where that mobility becomes economic competitiveness, economic opportunities for people. So it is impossible for us not to carry on pursuing the expansion of MyCity. It's an essential part of building an integrated city that gets past those design features of South Africa's history that isolates pockets of our population in areas with no job opportunities.
Well, JP Smith, thank you, Jean-Pierre, for joining us this morning. That's a member of the Mayoral Committee on Safety and Security in the City of Cape Town. And, of course, now we can tell you that the city, taxi associations and Golden Arrow bus services have agreed to work together to prevent future disruptions and violence that we've seen a little bit earlier this week when 8 buses were set alight in the city there. Finally, Supersport Park will host the Global Soft Tech Sixers Cricket Challenge for the first time on African soil, and it starts tomorrow. The tournament will see 6 franchise teams, 6 African countries compete for the African Sixers title. Now, to talk about this a little bit, we are joined by the tournament director, Malcolm Drysdale, and then the Unlimited Titans cricket captain, Henry Davids, a man from my hometown of Stellenbosch. So I'm very happy to have you with us today, Henry. Fantastic.
Thanks.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
Malcolm, let's start with you, as always, with new events like we've seen with T20. There's always a little bit of excitement beforehand. What can the crowds, who ultimately will decide whether this is a success or a failure, what can the crowds expect?
Even I think you used the right word: excitement, action, big hits. I think the game is a complete different game. We're looking at a 6-a-side game. It's a smaller boundary. All 6 players are batting. Only 5 must bowl, and each must bowl at least 1 over.
Henry, we see so much cricket being played already around the world.
Yeah.
What is the future for a tournament like this, or a format rather like this? What does the future hold, you think?
I think, like Malcolm said, a lot of excitement. We could see in the past with T20 revolutionizing Test cricket, one-day cricket. So it could bring a lot more different dynamics in the other formats.
Can we see 6-a-side specialists? There we have you hitting it at the park as you do. Do we see a future where we're going to see 6-a-side specialists like we see T20 specialists and guys playing in a sort of circus around the world? Is that what the future holds for this?
I think you never know, especially with the crowds loving the shorter formats of cricket. You know, with T20 you could see the crowds backing into T20 games. Maybe with 6-a-side exactly the same. They started off in Hong Kong, and obviously now here in South Africa, it could be a big bang for us.
Now, he mentioned Hong Kong. This is the inaugural event here in South Africa. How do you plan on avoiding the same fate as the Hong Kong Sixers? They haven't returned.
Yeah, I think our first action point that we ticked was to say we signed long-term deals with sponsors. Global Softex Solution, City of Tshwane, signed long-term deals, and so at least we've got it for a few years.
What are the big names that we can expect then to take part from tomorrow? Who are the marquee names that's going to make this thing buzz, other than Henry?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, obviously, I've got one of the bigger names here next to me. But if we look at the teams, Cobras, we've got Justin Ongtong, Richard Levy. From the Lions, Temba Buvoma, Christopher Morris. Titans, Faji Ferran-Bardine, Rulo van der Merwe, Henry next to me. Yeah. Warriors, Colin Ingram. We've got Rusty Tron, Dolphins, Mornay van Wyk, Tande Chabalala. At the Knights, we've got Reza Hendricks, Quinton Friend, just to name a few.
So all the big names on the provincial circuit is going to be, that's the good news. I want to ask you about the professionals, because the professionals can be a little bit finicky at times. When T20 started, we heard a lot of things around, it's a bit of hit and giggle, it's not really that serious. But now we've got World Cups in it, and it's very serious business, and the money it's brought into the game has elevated a lot of the professionals. Do the guys see this now as a bit of hit and giggle, or are they going to give it a full go?
No, it's not eating giggle, especially if you come to professional, especially South Africa. If it's competition and there's trophies involved, the guys want to win trophies. So we had a little chat yesterday, how we're going to go about it, and it's very serious. So I think not only us, all the other fans are very serious about this, and they want to win a trophy.
And what's your message then to the fans? I know South African fans, they love to, especially come out to SuperSport Park. It's such a great viewing ground. It's a great place to watch cricket. What's your message then to the fans?
Yeah, like you said, SuperSport Park is a great place to watch cricket. Hopefully everyone come out tomorrow, watch balls fly. There's going to be a lot of sixes being hit. You'll see all South African stars there over the next 2 days, so it's going to be a lot of excitement.
Malcolm, tell us about the African challenge that's coming. We see 6 African countries. How is this going to add to the spectacle, and is this part of maybe taking the game into Africa a little bit?
No, definitely. I think the one thing that people must remember, the short version of the game, you can't say, listen, it's a test batsman that must stand there for 6 hours and bat. It's excitement, it's quick, so any team can win. I think that's an important point to make. So it's a very competitive competition. The goal for us at this stage is to bring in a tourism leg to it. At this stage, it's the first event. We're going to do it in South Africa. But, the sky's the limit. We want to move to Namibia. We want to go to Zim, Falls maybe. Because it's a smaller field, it's easy to create a field. So, big future.
Henry, the format, does the fundamentals still stay the same? Or do you have to be a different kind of player to excel in sixes?
No, it stays exactly the same. We had like I said, we had a trial run yesterday. The field is unbelievably small, so you don't have to smash the ball out of SuperSport Park, So it's just this case of doing the simple things, still do that, and then just time the ball. Even missies will go for sixes.
Even missies will go for six. But that's what the people want to see, you guys. Thank you for coming this morning. Fantastic. I think it's going to do well in South Africa. I think South Africans love seeing the ball flying out the park, and up here on the Highveld, it does so very easily. I think that's why you moved up here, isn't it, Henry? The ball travels a bit further, doesn't it?
A lot less hitting, just timing and the ball flies.
Just times it out of the park. Thank you very much. That's Unlimited Titans cricket captain Henry Davids, and then the tournament. Is it the tournament director?
Correct.
Tournament director Malcolm Drysdale talking about the Softex Sixers Challenge. Will be the first time on South African soil tomorrow. Let's take a final look at what you are talking about on social media. Gareth Dixon. Is it Dixon? Dixon. Where should the focus of anti-match fixing be? Players, managers, gambling companies, robust discussion going on here right now. We are not talking about match fixing here. We're talking about sixes. Gavin Carpenter says, looking forward to attending the Transparency UK match fixing event in London this evening. Of course, there's been lots of issues, little issues with match fixing. At Fikile Mbalula reminds MPs today, FIFA is not a small federation from Guguletu. It is a big, powerful international body. Hashtag match fixing, says Janet Hurd. Well, those are just some of the views. We're talking match fixing in football. Cricket has had its own problems. Sport in general is at risk. Lots and lots of money going around. And even cricketers are now multi-millionaires. much like football is. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast 5 a.m. The following morning, we also stream live on YouTube at that time with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.